Hello and welcome to another episode of Quick Bytes, where we bring you relevant information about Azure NetApp Files features and use cases. My name is Justin Parisi and I'm a technical marketing engineer for Azure NetApp Files. Today's episode is all about standard network features for Azure NetApp Files. Standard network features were announced for general availability in September of 2022, and you can find more information in the link below. Within Azure NetApp Files, you have two choices when you're setting up your virtual network configuration for your volumes: Basic and Standard. Basic provides only 1,000 client IP connections and offers fundamental security functionality and no routing options. Standard network features offers a more standard Azure networking experience, with the client IP connections limitation being at the VNet level rather than the Azure NetApp Files level. That means you can have up to 65,536 private IP addresses per virtual network connecting to your Azure NetApp Files volumes. When first creating your Azure NetApp Files volume, if you think you're ever going to need more than 1,000 client IP connections to that volume, you might as well go ahead and set up standard networking features today. But scale isn't the only benefit of standard network features. Security and routing are also a huge part of why you may want to consider using it. Standard network features in Azure NetApp Files offers things like network security groups, or NSGs, which is essentially a firewall for your Azure resources in an Azure VNet. This allows you to allow or deny inbound and outbound traffic via destination port, IP address, or protocol. For instance, an Azure NetApp Files NFS volume would need you to allow inbound and outbound traffic for port 2049 to allow NFS to work properly. Standard network features in Azure NetApp Files also allows you to create things like user-defined routes, or UDRs. These are also known as static routes. By default, Azure creates system routes which are more wide open than your network security team might prefer. Custom routes allow you to more finely segment network traffic to use preferred paths depending on their IP address or subnets. This is especially useful when setting up VNet peerings in a hub-spoke architecture that would require transient routing. You can also use custom routes to make sure traffic passes through a specific virtual appliance for traffic inspection. Standard network features in Azure NetApp Files also improves network resiliency with active-active VPN gateway support, and can improve performance between your Azure and on-premises resources by way of ExpressRoute FastPath connectivity. Plus, if you want to be able to access Azure NetApp Files volumes across regions in a globally peered VNet in Azure, standard network features is a requirement. In fact, some Azure NetApp Files features require the use of standard network features, including 2 TB capacity pools, as well as customer-managed keys. Don't worry though, standard network features in Azure NetApp Files is a feature you can use free of charge. Currently, you can already use the standard network features across a majority of the Azure NetApp Files enabled regions. Now, let's take a quick look at how easy it is to implement standard network features in Azure NetApp Files.
First, I'll navigate to my NetApp account in the Azure NetApp Files service and select my capacity pool. From here, I'll click Volumes in the left menu and then Add Volume here at the top. Once I do that, I get a volume creation wizard with name, capacity pool, size, quota, and so on. About 2/3 of the way from the bottom, I can find Network Features, which is where I can select between Basic or Standard. The default setting is for Standard if the region supports standard network features, so I don't really even need to do anything special here to enable it. If you don't see the option, then that likely means your region doesn't currently support standard network features. Again, you can check to see if your region is supported in the link below.
Like all things in Microsoft Azure, it's super simple to do. Alright, that's a wrap for this Quick Bytes episode on standard network features in Azure NetApp Files. If you want to learn more about standard networking or Azure NetApp Files, go to learn.microsoft.com or scan the QR code. Thanks for watching.